They soaked wine-drenched linen, tucked bog-moss against bare skin, and occasionally let crimson trickle straight down their woolen stockings, while bishops warned that a single drop could wither vineyards and kill bees. Welcome to medieval menstruation, where the blood was real and the advice was often lethal. Most women reached for whatever they could sew, boil, or steal. Linen clouts were common among townsfolk who owned enough fabric to dedicate scraps to the cause. The savvy ones stitched cords to the corners, tying the pad to a waist string so it wouldn't slide into their hose during a marketplace haggle. Laundry day, though, was its own gamble. Water had to be hauled, wood had to be burned, and scrubbers never removed the rusty tint completely. More than one bright-dyed kirtle owed its fashionable scarlet hue to repeated failure at stain removal, an accidental trend nobody dared mention aloud. Peasant women with leaner wardrobes bled straight into layers of petticoats, then hung the damp cloth near the hearth where steam and wood smoke masked the iron scent. In damp northern villages, moss was the cheap miracle, absorbent, antiseptic, blessedly silent. Girls learned which patches of sphagnum grew cleanest and swapped locations like contraband. Meanwhile, shepherdesses sheared lamb's wool thin enough to line undergarments, discovering too late that raw wool itched like a moral sermon. They endured anyway. The alternative was public streaks down the leg, and nothing ruins a midsummer fair faster than trailing evidence of Eve's curse across the ale bench. Inside stone keeps, noblewomen fared only slightly better. Their wardrobes overflowed, but gowns laced from neck to shin left no easy route for underskirt adjustments. Some ladies sat astride chamber pots all morning, reading psalters while gravity handled the mess. Others reclined on carved wooden period chairs with a discreet hole in the seat, essentially thrones with built-in drain pipes. The servants below collected what dripped, muttering about St. Agatha's disapproval, yet pocketing the coin that purchased their silence. Because nothing advertised fertility like sheets rinsed pink in the courtyard, nobles paid extremely well to keep theirs pearly white. And then came the prescriptions. Salernitan physicians, quoting Galen through a Christian lens, warned that retention of courses could ferment female flesh into madness. Their solution? Hot wine mixed with powdered viper flesh, swallowed thrice nightly until bleeding resumed. The Trotula texts suggested rue, mugwort, and a ride on horseback. Gallop hard enough, the flow will follow. Hildegard of Bingen, ever the pragmatic abbess, recommended pulverized coral tied in a silk sachet near the navel to calm the fiery humors. None of this worked reliably, but it sounded authoritative, which was half the battle when your patient feared demonic possession more than sepsis. If theology could meddle in sex, it happily meddled in blood. Church councils forbade menstruating women from receiving the Eucharist, touching holy relics, or, according to a particularly zealous 12th century canon, walking beneath newly consecrated bells. One misstep, warned the clergy, and crops might rot in their fields. Yet monasteries penned sly marginalia about red tides. Monks kept tally of which sisters missed Mass, confirming suspicions that curiosity triumphed over doctrine. Secretly, priests sought menstrual cloth to mix into apotropaic potions. Sprinkle a shred in a rival's soup, and his limbs would quake like poplars. Officially impure, unofficially powerful, that was the medieval brand of female biology. Because men wrote most records, silence surrounds the daily logistics. But merchant account books whisper bolts of waist linen spike in price every 4 weeks, as do bundles of southern French woad used for blue dye, perfect camouflage for stubborn stains. In London's Cheapside, washerwomen coded their services. Fulling of bleuet cluth conveniently included discretion fees. A 15th century Parisian housewife complained that her husband counted every rag, She bartered 3 goose eggs for moss instead. The local wise woman, of course, kept an informal exchange rate, an ounce of yarrow for one secret that would never reach the parish priest. Travel complicates everything. Pilgrim manuals advised women to pack spare girdles, wide cloth belts with a slit for inserting folded rags. When those fouled, pilgrims washed them in wine, safer than water, and dried them on roadside shrines. Worn girdles often doubled as bandit bribes. Hand over the blood-stained belt and keep your purse. Bandits believed menstrual cloth cursed anyone who carried it unwillingly, so they took the silver instead and left the rags in the dust. Practical magic, medieval style. But wait, it gets weirder. Some doctors swore that a drop of menstrual blood cured leprosy if applied before sunrise. Others insisted it poisoned dogs on contact. Both theories landed in court records when a Bristol woman was tried for menstruous witchcraft after her neighbor's mastiff died, licking her washing. The jury, 9 men, 3 women, acquitted her, perhaps out of sympathy, perhaps because nobody wanted to handle Exhibit A, a pail of pink water gone rank under summer heat. Not all stories end in superstition. Midwives, the true field researchers, understood patterns. They taught apprentices to check cloth color. Healthy crimson signified normal cycles. Thin, watery flow foretold fever. Clotted black warned of miscarriage. Midwifery manuals from Bologna record improvisations. Olive oil-soaked wool for dryness. Salted mutton fat to slow excessive bleeding. Pounded ivy leaf for cramps. The church distrusted these knowers of secrets, yet relied on them when noble heirs were at stake. A duke might banish a midwife for muttering charms, only to smuggle her back when his duchess fainted in chapel. Class affected embarrassment as much as comfort. A brewer's wife could leak at the market and blame spilled ale. A duchess left red on a banquet bench and sparked court gossip lethal to alliances. Tailors stitched darker gussets into noble gowns, inventing a primitive padless safety zone. Troubadours lampooned scarlet saddles in clandestine verses, yet their patrons still paid for black velvet cushions during long feasts. The contradiction was as medieval as cathedral gargoyles. Parade purity while hiding humanity's messiest truth under gold brocade. Seclusion huts, famously used elsewhere, rarely gained traction in Europe. But certain alpine villages practiced the Red Week, sending women to a spare loft above the goat shed. There they traded gossip, stitched fresh pads from rag ends, and drank juniper tea for cramps. Ironically, these shunned spaces became micro-republics. No husbands, no clergy, no chores, just bleeding women plotting harvest strategies and matchmaking. Once a month, patriarchy accidentally issued a 5-day vacation. Naturally, the practice faded as soon as men realized the loft produced cooperation. Even commerce adapted. Italian apothecaries sold imported sea sponges, soft, reusable, dangerously easy to lose internally. Instructions were vague: moisten with vinegar and insert. Retrieval strings? Optional. Lost sponges caused infections later blamed on demons because acknowledging anatomy was less comfortable than exorcism. Meanwhile, Norse traders hawked reindeer lichens said to drink twice its weight in blood. It did, but removal felt like peeling Velcro from tender skin. The sagas remained silent on the screams that surely followed. Despite every herbal poultice and relic-based prohibition, one brutal truth persisted. Many women simply worked through the pain. Field laborers bound their middles with leather thongs to press cloth into place and keep soreness at bay. Mill girls stood ankle-deep in river water, cold, numbing cramps until sensation left entirely. A French wool dyer noted that menstruating workers stepped into vats of warm madder root, claiming the heat coaxed the blood away. Whether that eased discomfort or simply masked stains in a red cauldron, no one bothered recording outcomes. Yet medieval medicine occasionally glimpsed insight. Arab Andalusian physician al-Zahrawi described the uterus with startling accuracy and warned of toxic lead powders some women used to staunch heavy flow. His surgical kit included silver pipes for draining retained blood, rudimentary but life-saving. European translators cherry-picked his text, praising the instruments while ignoring the part where he advised education for female patients. Progress, like a badly tied clout, slipped at inconvenient moments. Late in the 15th century, printing presses spat out health primers that devoured old taboos. One German pamphlet flatly stated, "Monthly bleeding is natural, neither sin nor plague." It sold poorly, perhaps because printers still charged by the page, and most readers preferred sin-soaked scandals. Still, the idea seeped into urban consciousness. If this is simply nature, maybe we can engineer better solutions. Needleworkers experimented with layered wool felt liners. Italian merchants offered perfumed pouches. None sold fast, but the notion that comfort trumped superstition had finally breached the castle wall. Which brings us to the unrecorded millions, the girls whose names vanished with their last washed rag. They navigated rivers of misinformation armed only with clan wisdom and stubborn resilience. They synchronized harvest breaks by moonlight, timed baths to the village well's quiet hours, and carved secret notches on courageously shared belts to track cycles. When churchmen thundered about impurity, they whispered jokes about bishops whose noses bled during Mass. Shall we exile him to the goat loft? Dry humor kept them sane while wool scratched and sponges went astray. So the next time a glossy advertisement promises liberation via microfiber wings, remember the moss-foraging shepherdess balancing on a hillside, cursing itchy lamb's wool while her flock scattered. Remember the Genoese noblewoman bribing servants to bleach a stain before dawn could tarnish her dowry. Remember the washerwoman of York who charged extra for blue cluth but slipped moss bundles to her poorest clients free of coin. Their improvisation, pain, and occasional triumph form the unseen seam binding centuries of female experience, proof that even in the age of armored knights and gilded reliquaries, the most relentless battle was waged against a red tide with nothing but linen, lore, and sheer endurance.